Yeah, all good. All good. Good morning. Nice, peaceful, early morning walk. Nice and crisp this morning. Yeah, all good, all good. Yeah, just sort of reflecting on a topic of conversation I've had with different colleagues in the game of football. About when young footballers face a choice between playing first team football in a lower league or playing under 21 or under 23 professional development leagues in higher division. For example, maybe in the Premier League or the Championship. Decision can significantly impact the development and career trajectory of a player. Both pathways, I think, offer their own unique advantages and have their challenges as well. And it can be useful, I suppose, for players, coaches, parents to think about some of the challenges and the benefits before making a decision. Look, as always, I'm not to give any advice. I'm just speaking anecdotally based on my own experience. You might see it differently to me, but this is my take on it. And I mean, just before we sort of begin, by the way, you used to have the Premier League Reserve League and League Football Reserve League in England. It was up until, say, 2012, I think, stand corrected, it was disbanded and replaced with the under 21, 23s leagues. So that was assigned to prepare academy players for senior football. So I suppose similar principles apply to what I'm saying. In different countries, you might still have the reserve team, so to speak. But look, when I think about it, I think back to years ago. I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I was working at Bury Football Club alongside Chris Casper, I was working alongside him as a performance coach, fitness coach, and so if I reflect back to one experience where sort of I can reflect on, and so just a bit of backstory. I worked with Chris from 2003 to 5 in the youth team, and then September 2005, Chris replaced Graham Barrow after a bad start. I think it was 7 games or so without a win, and Barry were like bottom of the table, the foot of the table. That's the sort of backstory. That's obviously no indictment on Graham, as these things happen in football. It wasn't easy. The club was strapped for cash, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I went on board with Chris September. On the paper, he talks about how it was his first signing, so to speak, one of his first signings. But anyway, look, I was well aware at the time that we're going to be into a relegation battle, and I knew the challenges that we had. A lot of players out injured, no money to bring players in, players had to be sold. So it looked pretty bleak from that perspective, but I felt that with Chris in charge and myself, we could navigate Bury to safety, which ultimately we did. But it was really interesting at one point. The example I'm going to use between sort of, do you develop in the lower league first team, or do you stay in the Razzies under 21, 23s? And one example was Kasper Schmeichel. Chris Casper signed Kasper Schmeichel on a loan from City. It was around about February 2006, and I'm pretty sure it was for cover for Dootson, who I think he broke his wrist, if I remember correctly. So we didn't have a keeper, so to speak, and obviously going to struggle to bring anyone in. And I think Kasper was around about 19, Kasper Schmeichel, roughly. But he was pivotal, Kasper Schmeichel, in helping us stay up. He stayed till the end of the season. I think Chris brought him back again the following season. I stand corrected on that, but I'm pretty sure he did. But I wasn't there the following season. I'd moved on. But anyway, and Kasper Schmeichel, he plays for Denmark. He won the Premier League with Leicester, was instrumental, and I'm pretty sure by all accounts, Kasper Schmeichel talked about how significant being in a relegation battle was, and having a significant role in that battle shaped his development as a player. So he was a big part of keeping the club up that year with poor limited financial resources, and the loan spell was about 15 game. But yeah, look, for me, I think that valuable experience, first of experience, was a great opportunity for him to prove himself in that environment, so the relegation battle, so to speak. But I would say, despite his young age, he showed a lot of maturity, resilience. I mean, his shot-stopping ability for me was sort of second to none. He commanded the box and that sort of stuff. So I think it was a formative chapter in Kasper Schmeichel's career and exposed him to the realities of football in the lower league and battling relegation. I think it helped him, in my opinion, the sort of that mental toughness that would be a hallmark of his goalkeeping style. And yeah, I think from what I understand, he talked about how that time had an impact on him as a player. But anyway, more to the point, I suppose, if I think about the advantages of sort of in lower league, you got that you come down to the lower league, you got competitive experience. You're regularly playing that first team environment. The pace, the intensity, the match fitness, all that sort of stuff, the game management, the responsibility, the pressure in that instance of obviously us possibly getting relegated type thing. The pressures, the visibility for your career, people see you. You know, if you kind of tucked away in reserve team football, 21s, 23s, kind of no one kind of knows visibly, apart from the team and that sort of environment. So there is that to sort of think about for me. But then you say, okay, you could argue the quality of opposition, the facilities and training ground. I mean, at that time we used to train for the most part at Goshen, which wasn't ideal. It wasn't ideal to train there. It wouldn't have been anywhere near compared what he had in City. So that's the reality. That's obviously facilities have improved at lower league now as well, but you're not going to be the same facilities as the top Premier League club. You're not going to get the same level of support psychologically, physically, sports science. You've got some great people who work in the lower leagues, fantastic people, but you haven't got the same entourage you're going to have in Premier League, so to speak. You don't have that sort of phase development. You're out there, people can see you make a mistake, everyone's on your back type thing. So, there is all that to sort of take on board. The resources you've got in a higher division club, the benefit from like all sorts, the medical care, nutrition, all that sort of stuff that can help. You've got some of it in lower league, but not to the extent, But then you start to think that lack of competitive intensity in that 21, 23, is it as intense as first team? Well, I wouldn't have thought so, but you might think otherwise. Especially if you've got a relegation battle, the intensity, the atmosphere, you can cut like a knife, We, at that point, we had a winning run, but then other teams were winning too, so you can sort of feel the pressure building, so to speak. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. The other thing as well too is that sometimes I think in the 23s, 21s, the resis, you can stagnate. You can kind of get stuck in that environment and delay that professional breakthrough, especially if you're playing in a higher league team and there's players they're bringing in. And then all of a sudden you've got your chance to play first team, but then they bring another player in and you're kind of stuck in that. So that's the issue, that limited exposure for young players. I mean, there are players playing 21s, 23s, the old resis, people aren't probably familiar with, I haven't heard of, because they don't get the exposure apart from obviously fans and that sort of stuff of the club. But I suppose the argument is which is better. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. The best option depends on the individual for me. Their mindset, their long-term goal. For players that are physically ready, mentally and mature, like Casper was in that situation. First team experience as lower league can help development. Absolutely, real world challenge. Is a strong character, Casper, to come in that situation. Other people might have struggled in that situation at that age. To be, you got 15 games pretty much or so. It's going to be a fight, so to speak, a scrap. Every game's going to be a scrap. It's not easy for some players in that environment. And it was a masterstroke by Chris Casper to bring Kasper Schmeichel in, I think, to sort of identify him, for sure. Technically, if they're outfield players, they might need more time to adapt to the physicality. So you might think, okay, keep it on the 21, 23s, because they've got time to sort of adapt. They can sort of, in that first team, there's no margin for error. You make a mistake, the other team scores. It's not ideal in 21s, 23s, but in first team football, obviously there's 3 points on the line. There's jostling for the position table. So I would say, my opinion would be a balanced approach. Young players benefit from competitive first team football, while also accessing the high quality coaching and other stuff you get at a bigger club. But then you have a loan spell like Kasper Schmeichel had in that situation, and that can help. That sort of balanced phased approach for me, kind of like a hybrid approach, I would say. And you see many clubs, they use lower leagues to combine both. Even like lower league clubs, I'll send players to non-league clubs, for example, and that's another topic I'll cover another day. So I think long term, the ultimate goal, prepare players to sustain success at a high level. So development's got to be tailored to the individual and flexible. So both, I would say, first team football under 21, 23 development leagues play an important role in growth. The ideal pathway for me varies by individual circumstances, but a combination of both, I would say, senior experience and structured development coaching is probably the way forward, I would say. But it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts are. They're just my thoughts. It'd be great to see what your thoughts are.